Hello, I'm Ed Rabyd, otherwise known as the Rabyd Atheist, a former pastor turned atheist, now a compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. You're free to like or dislike the video, so please feel free to hit those buttons. Feel free to comment below, and I would appreciate it if you would subscribe to the channel and hit your notification bell for more content as it is released. You are free to share my videos as much as you like as well. This is a Friday video. It's going to be dropped a little bit late because quite frankly, yesterday I came home and somebody had broken out their karaoke machine and was singing in the background, and I knew that that would be picked up by my recording, so I decided not to do it. So we are here on Friday, and I just got home from work, and I'm sitting down and I'm saying, let's do this video. I almost thought about doing it live. I guess I would have to hear some comments about whether or not a live video on Friday would be worth it at times. It might be interesting. But I'm here today to address, of course, comments and bring up some other ideas forward today. We're going to talk about four things. Basically some feedback, comments, and then I'm going to talk about some rights and some of the quarantine issues that I see. Then hopefully I can get a message out. I see a lot of people very upset that some people aren't following the quarantine rules, and I'm trying to, there's ways to address that, I think, and ways not to address it, and, where you'll have more success, but I think that's kind of where we're at. I want to get to some of my comments today, and so I'm going to start off with a comment that I got from a viewer that went something to the effect of, I just followed your comment, I just followed your channel, and I am surprised that you don't have more subscribers. First of all, thank you. I appreciate the positive feedback all the way around. I would say that probably the reason that you don't see me having more subscribers is I'm pretty new. I'm very, very, very new. This is me talking about week 11. I have noticed it is very rare for a channel to blossom until it has at least a year's worth of play and a lot of content, or very good content, high quality content. I'm not a video expert, so I'm zipping along just throwing out videos because I'm going the more content route. I'm going the quantity has a quality all of its own sort of thing. Probably the only time you'll ever hear me quote a communist in a positive light. But at the same time, I'm kind of heading forward with the channel, doing what I do, and I suspect that over time it will grow. And so, yeah, I appreciate the thanks for the good stuff, man. This comes from Dallas Wade. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. You have no idea how much I appreciate that. People have talked to me about this channel, and it's like I'm used to, as a former minister, I'm used to having a soapbox. Didn't have a soapbox. Now I have a soapbox again. So thank you for that. That's kind of what this channel is all about. Just me having a soapbox to get up on and pontificate from time to time. So thank you for that comment. Another comment of the way of feedback came today at work. Somebody asked me, one of my coworkers asked me, who watches the channel, do you ever get any negative feedback? His exact quote, do you ever get any shit for doing that? And my response to that is, actually, no. I got some comments at first off of Facebook about that. I've had some definite concerns. There are members of the family that think I'm way too public, but they're very private people, and so I guess that is. I know that, for instance, I think one of my family members expressed to my wife that she was concerned about the content of what I said. I think a lot of people in my family are very concerned about the fact that I call myself an atheist, and most of them really don't know what that means in some respects. They know it's a bad thing because it means that I don't believe in Jesus or anything like that. And so I'm fairly certain that those discussions take place. But I've never really gotten any super negative feedback. And once again, it kind of, I bet you, goes back to the idea of the fact that this channel isn't really, and I, as the Rabyd Atheist, aren't well known. I'm not very famous in that respect. So there's other YouTubers out there that are far more famous and far more well known than I. So that's kind of, where I kind of just really go forward with it. And I don't really get any negative feedback. I've gotten a lot of concern. I've gotten a lot of, I don't like what you're doing, but I'm not going to stop you kind of thing. I do appreciate all the positive comments, and I thank you for that. Another comment I got, this is probably the most recent comment I got, was on my video about the right to assemble in quarantine and the essential business of religion, which was Wednesday's video. This comment came from Al Jolson, I believe that's how you say it. And he comments about it. This is clearly unconstitutional on many grounds. It said that people are having their careers and dreams called non-essential. And I think that's kind of what I was getting at with the point of that video, is that this whole discussion of what is essential and what is non-essential is very nebulous. And it's not precise language. And when you have non-precise language and opinion-based language, the legal system is going to come in after the fact, or even may even be starting before this is over, and they're going to sue the government along those lines, because a lot of businesses are going to say, you labeled us as non-essential, we disagree. You have to prove that we're non-essential in a court of law. And I'm going to tell you, that's going to be difficult to prove, because a lot of people that work for those companies are going to say it was essential to me. It was essential to my livelihood. It's essential to my career. It's essential. A business owner is going to say it was essential to my dream of owning my own business, and so on and so forth. And so, yes, you're right, Al. It's not clear, and it's bad that the government gets to call us. Now, is it clearly unconstitutional? I'm going to speak in two forms. My video was mostly addressing, and the reason I used the Library of Congress's information is because that's the official American Supreme Court decision, that the word peaceful in front of assembly means that there's a public good, or that allows for it. But if I read the Constitution plainly, as it is written, there is no exception clause for peaceful assembly. The government basically is barred from having any power there. Now, it might be argued that a state is not restricted in that regard, which is, I think that's kind of why you see various states taking different approaches to the CDC's announcement and to the various other announcements from the other government positions on the federal government. And why it seems like how well a state is doing greatly depends on their relationship, or what kind of relationship they want with the federal government, if they want one at all. There are many states that aren't doing quarantine, some are. There are other states that are doing certain actions, and other states that are not doing anything or very little. And the real thing about all of them, though, is every politician, particularly every governor, is not going to want to be the guy that allowed COVID-19 to come into his state and actually wreak havoc. None of them are going to want that. So every one of them is still watching that if they got a brain in their head. Now, if they don't have a brain in their head, which is quite possible with governors or any other politician, you might still have problems with this. But that's why each state is kind of taking its own approach, because I don't think the federal government actually has authority to say you can't assemble. But for the public good, states might have that right. That's where it gets nebulous, and that's where you have to start heading to your own state constitution and go, okay, what does my state allow for? Now, if the state basically says we uphold the rights, or basically has a statement of citizen rights that's very similar to the United States Constitution, then they're basically saying that they're stripped of that power as well. Idealistically, for me as a classical liberal libertarian, I would say no, the Constitution doesn't allow for any reason the government to restrict assembly of any kind, as long as that assembly is peaceful. And by peaceful, I mean not violent. Otherwise, I don't think they have the right to do a lot of things. That said, I'm simply pointing out that currently, the way the Supreme Court has interpreted based on cases is that this is the way it's supposed to be. And I think this is where people are going to run into problems, because a lot of people don't know how to distinguish between what is the ideal that the founding fathers were trying to get across and what the government actually does. I think I run into this problem mostly with patriotism. I know a lot of people that are very patriotic about the flag and very patriotic about the national anthem and very patriotic about that sort of thing. I realize those things for what they are. They're nothing more than symbols for something else. I am very patriotic about that something else. I am very patriotic about my country actually being for the rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I am very much for the ideas presented in the Bill of Rights. Those things, to me, ignite my patriotism when they're followed far more than any of the flags. That's all symbolic religious nonsense to me. And I know I'm not trying to offend anybody by that statement, but if you really think about it, saluting the flag and saying the anthem and, standing and doing it is a very religious type observance. And as somebody who can recognize religiosity when I see it very well, it bothers me that some people are so blindly loyal to that. They can't look at what their government is doing and realize that their government is not living up to the ideals that are represented by those symbols. I think my definition of patriotism and Mark Twain's, Samuel Clemens, is pretty much the same. I love my country. It's the government that I can't stand. I'm proud of my government when it deserves it. I'm not so proud of it when it violates the rights of people that it's not supposed to. I mean, the Constitution is very much written with the idea of restricting the government from interfering in citizens' rights. It basically puts the citizen ahead of the government, which is probably the first government ever in history to do so. If you study history, maybe there's another one that's obscure or whatever, but it was the first one to do so on a grand scale. So that's kind of where I'm thinking now. People might argue at this point what the source of rights is. There's two basic camps. There's the natural rights camp, which I no longer really can uphold other than from a sort of deistic point of view that says that every human being inherently has the same rights. And the only way to be fair and be equal and establish justice is to treat everybody the same as far as rights. But I would also say that there's a consequentialist version of rights, where rights come from, that by establishing these rights, we have learned that it is better for us as a society and better for us for a survival standpoint. I would say America's success, the United States' success, is testimony of the fact that liberty and upholding these rights has made us a much more prosperous nation than rights that are somehow diminished simply because of quote unquote security. And so that kind of leads me to the quarantine troubles that we currently face. On a practical side, I'm a little bit worried for my own area. The problem with being in the North right now is this, and this is particularly evident today. Today, it is sunny out. It is 60 degrees. It is, to a Michigander such as myself, it is very warm. And after a 4-month already being cooped up in my apartment because of the weather, because it's been cold, holy crap, is the temptation really strong to get up, go out and take a walk. I can't do that because of the quarantine rules, and it's also chafing at my libertarian ideals. But I'm also concerned about this whole idea of social distancing. Now, I realize we're talking about actual physical distance here, but it's going to create what I would call a true social distancing, which is where you start to distance yourself from your fellow human beings. It's very much easier to do that when physically people are telling you this is what you need to do, that you need to distance yourself from other people. I decided to look it up. I was looking for an article in Google Scholar that would tell me the positive effects of any kind of social distancing. I couldn't find one. Long term, this is going to start to have some negative effects, and that's why the quarantine has to end sooner rather than later, because there is going to be some deadly things that begin to happen. One is right now, everybody who's been cooped up all winter long and now has nice sunny days outside, there's going to be a natural desire to shrug off the cabin fever and the depression that we already have for sunshine on my face and walking around and getting some fresh air. And you're telling me that after sort of semi-quarantining ourselves because of life situation, namely the winter, now you want me to stay in for another month? Yeah, I don't think that's going to work too well for a lot of people. I think psychologically, it's not good for us long term to start looking at other people as objects where they need to stand 6 feet away from us, or so on and so forth. Also, some of the other quarantine troubles are more practical. I was watching the governor of the state of Michigan last night doing a Q&A, and there was a question of, from a contractor who basically said, I go to work, I'm by myself. Okay, I'm in a house by myself, but suddenly I'm not essential anymore. Why can't I do this? And I think this is the practical problem, again, of the whole issue of this quarantine and essential and non-essential employee. One, I think that's in the eye of the beholder, but two, I think a better way to approach it, and I think this is what a lot of people are going to point out, is what the government should have probably done is said, if you want to stay open for business, here's the list of safety things that you need to do in order to stay open for business, regardless of the nature of your business. I think, if that's the case, that would have gone over better. And I think a lot of businesses would have said, okay, I've just got to follow these guidelines, and they certainly would have done it to stay open. I get that they don't want people to travel and drive around and like that, but I'm already doing that because I'm quote unquote an essential employee for what I do. I don't know. It doesn't take, with a virus, it just takes one person traveling from one place to another. If you don't completely quarantine people, a quarantine doesn't really work all that well. You're still going to have spread of the disease. Maybe you'll have less of a spread. But the other problem with this virus that we're dealing with COVID-19, is it's not really all that deadly. And I think eventually, one of the political things I've been talking about with a couple of people today is there's a reason why Donald Trump and the White House set the bar so high as how many people are going to die, the 100,000 to 250,000 in the United States are the amount of people going to die. And that's because they're highballing. This is a political tactic. You announce, we're expecting this. And then when the number comes out lower, and if it's any kind of significantly lower, the Trump administration and the White House are just going to come out there and say, see, we did such a great job. We kept this from being as bad as it could have been. This is kind of what tells me that COVID-19 isn't all that dangerous in some respects to a lot of people. It is a very dangerous virus. I'm not diminishing its power, but it's dangerous to a very specific group of people. I think if I would have handled it, I would have done two things differently. Number one, I would have made sure that the quarantine specifically affected those that were vulnerable and the elderly in particular. Number two, I would have told every business, here's the safety standards of what you need to do. These may change. They may get altered, but if you can follow these safety guidelines to make sure that your people are practicing social distancing and hygiene and all this other stuff, then you can stay open, and it doesn't matter what kind of business you are. I think that would have gone off better, and I think it would have probably had the same effect as the quarantine. and it wouldn't have had as detrimental effect on the economy. I just saw an article today, 700,000 people are out of work because of this. Unemployment has climbed to 4.4. I don't know what real unemployment is, but that's the unemployment rate as the federal government does it. But the real unemployment rate is probably a little bit higher. So when I look at all this, when we have this discussion of rights, whether or not this was going to work, I am concerned because we as human beings have survived by being a social species, and social distancing is going to begin to kick us in the ass. And this joblessness rate is going to also kick us in the ass. What's going to happen is we know that there's a correlation between the unemployment rate and people committing suicide. When people begin to lose all hope, you're already putting people in a stressful situation because of the virus and the quarantine, and now they've lost their job. There are going to be some people, that just figures, my life's shit anyway, and now it's got any more shittier, and they're going to go into that mode. And now you're not letting them outside to get out in the sunshine and walk around and do the things. And so they got to stay in this place where they've been depressed all winter, and now you're going to depress them even more. At what point does the suicide rate exceed the rate that COVID-19 is killing people? If that happens, do we lift the quarantine because the quarantine has had more of a negative effect, which it will over time, than, the virus itself? At what point do we make that decision? Feel free to comment about that on below. I'm interested in some feedback on that, because this is the kind of thing that decision makers have to make a decision about. It kind of sucks sometimes to be a decision maker because you're basically trying to determine which shitty scenario is less shitty, and that's sometimes difficult. In this case, I think you're going to see suicide, maybe even murder rates, because people are cooped up with each other longer than they should be. You're going to see some antagonism between the quarantine police and other people. To the quarantine police, you're going to convince more people with genuine care and concern than yelling at them and calling the cops or whatever else than you ever will with anything else. So remember that. Just because, people may be violating some rules doesn't mean you have the right to suddenly stop treating them like human beings. I've always found that it's better to go forward with kindness, no matter what the situation is. So there's that. But I am interested in some comments and some feedback on where this should go, or whether or not some better ideas could have been tried. It seems to me that quarantine is an overly simplistic idea, but it's also something that counters human nature, especially this time of year when spring is springing and people have been cooped up inside for 4 months and they're losing their jobs. And we know who specifically this virus is most likely to kill. It seems with all that knowledge, a different tactic or a different approach could have been done. And I'm interested to hear what some people would have to say, and maybe that'll be featured next week in next Friday's video. Once again, welcome to my channel. Comments will have a way of influencing the content of Friday's videos, as you can see. I will respond to any comment when I can. Sometimes I'm just going to give you a thumbs up, say thanks for the comment. That's pretty much it. You can also ask me a direct question anytime if you're looking to understand something. And you're also welcome to comment on anything you'd like to see me do. Videos are usually updated Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, usually 3-ish. Sometimes not Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Depends on when I have days off to record. I don't tolerate name calling in the comments section. Demonstrate somebody's stupid. Don't call them stupid. Okay. Be sure to like, subscribe, and get your notifications the way you want. And once again, this is Rabyd, the Rabyd Atheist, and hopefully I can someday convince you to be a rabid atheist like myself. In the meantime, I'm signing off and saying goodbye and stay safe.